What's good? It's your boy Fanon. Good morning to subscribers and people who aren't subscribed. Welcome to the channel. Today I'm going to talk about Bob Arum and something that he said about a matchup between Terence Crawford and Sean Porter, Terence Crawford and Keith Thurman, and what he said about a potential match with Arum Jr. Now, before I do that, though, I want to welcome back to the channel and thank you for subscribing. If you're not subscribed, please subscribe. Hit the bell icon so that you can be notified when we do more videos and we release more when we do our live streams. And thank you to everybody that supports the live stream and supports the channel by listening to the videos. That is how listening to the videos, and we have commercials in the videos. That's how we raise revenue. Also, thank you to everybody who donates in the super chat and the Venmo and the Patreon. It's much appreciated. And also, just a reminder, I'm going to be updating the Patreon page soon, and I'll let you know when that's ready, because I'm definitely going to be loading some content on there with things that I really can't talk about on YouTube, because I try to keep this channel as PG rated. I drift into the R rated every once in a while, but I try to keep it as family friendly as possible, because there's a lot of people that listen to these videos with their kids. And also I'll talk about some social issues that are a little too sensitive to be forthright with on YouTube. So definitely going to be doing that. Now, Bob Arum, this is not a bash Terence Crawford video. I feel like every time I talk about Bob Arum, for a certain group of the subscribers to this channel, I think it's sometimes difficult for people to separate criticism of Bob Arum from criticizing Terence Crawford. I've done this consistently for years with Bob Arum and Floyd Mayweather Jr., for Bob Arum and Manny Pacquiao. When Floyd Mayweather Jr. was coming up, there was more fighters at Top Rank for Bob Arum to match him up tough with in-house fights. Same thing was for Manny Pacquiao. It was easier to match him up with fights that at least people believed were competitive fights and good fights with other guys that were in-house. And in-house meaning that both fighters are represented by Top Rank. I criticize consistently Eddie Hearn for attempting to make in-house fights, where he's fighting two people who are represented by Matchroom Boxing, whether that is a Derek Chisora, a Dillian White, a Anthony Joshua, or somebody that's closely associated with it, who has fought on multiple multiple Matchroom cards in a Joseph Parker, and I'm sure now is going to be an Alexander Pavek and Carlos Takam, that type of thing. And having it a situation where if they don't have control of the other guy, that there's a lot less likely that the fight will happen. And that's the situation we're in with Terence Crawford and Top Rank, when Bob Arum says things like this, when asked about not just, and here I'm not talking about Errol Spence yet, I'm talking about the two other welterweight champions. There are two other welterweight champions besides Terence Crawford and besides Errol Spence. It's Sean Porter and it's Keith Thurman. And what he says is, all the other guys I discard. They're not in the same league as Crawford. Spence may be in the same league. I would love to make the Spence fight. You hear me now? I'm ready to make that fight next. I'm ready to make it on very fair terms, where no fighter or no network has an advantage to do that fight. We're prepared to sit down and get that fight done, but I can't force the other people into doing it. Do you understand? Now, the first part of this is him talking about two welterweight champions. The WBC champion and the WBA champion. You can say what you want about Sean Porter, and I do have some things to say about Sean Porter. Say what you want about Keith Thurman. Fair criticism on Keith Thurman. But both of those guys are welterweight champions. They're both welterweight champions. And to discard them, he's discarding half of the welterweight unification picture. And this is what I've been saying. There's no interest from Top Rank to have an undisputed welterweight champion. You cannot have an undisputed welterweight champion without the WBC and the WBA belts. That is what Bob Arum is communicating when he says all other guys I discard. Now, who are if they have a hard time making Terence a fight with Errol Spence, because they have to come to a situation where it's fair to both networks and no network has an advantage on getting the fight. Now, do you believe that? Do you believe that Bob Arum doesn't have an interest in what network? He wants to make sure it's fair that what network a Terence Crawford, Errol Spence Jr. fight is going to be on. If you believe that, man, seriously, I do have a bridge I'd like to sell to you. But that aside, who is Terence Crawford gonna fight if Keith Thurman is not in his class and Sean Porter's not in his class? Who else can he possibly fight if he doesn't fight Errol Spence Jr.? Then, for the sake of the best fighters fighting the best fighters, he might as well retire. Because those are the best of the welterweight division. Not his welterweights, Alexander Busputin, who's 11-0, right, out of Russia. He's got Alexander Busputin, and Ivis Kavanakis. Those are the people that he's going to fight that are on his level. Jose Benavidez. Who else is he going to fight? He's going to move up to 154 or have Carlos Adames move down to 147 and fight him. He's supposed to fight 3 times a year. Who's he going to fight 3 times a year? If he's not fighting Sean Porter, if he's not fighting Keith Thurman, if he's not fighting Errol Spence, he can only fight Errol Spence one time. What happens if he fights Errol Spence Jr. and say he wins? Say he fights Errol Spence Jr. next and he wins the fight. What's he going to do then? Fight in-house fights because nobody else over there is in his league? See, this is why I've been saying this the whole time, and people have been thinking that I'm complaining and I'm trashing Terence Crawford. I'm not trashing Terence Crawford. I'm telling the flat out facts about Bob Arum. Even when Bob Arum says, yes, I'm looking to make that fight next, as soon as he starts talking about the networks and a fair deal between the networks, you know that's not happening next. Because fair deal is an extremely subjective term. But this is when Errol Spence, when Terence Crawford and Bomac and those guys signed with Top Rank, you know that is going to happen. You know it's going to happen. It happens every time. They'll make a fight if they'll make a fight against somebody maybe on a lower level fight. You know, if this was a situation where they were trying to get the name of, say Jose Benavidez. If Jose Benavidez, if they wanted to see whether or not they didn't know where they were going to stand on Jose Benavidez. Jose Benavidez is just a member of the, is just a member of the stable, just a fighter in the stable. He's not sure if they're going to be an upper level fighter or whether he's going to be a a lower level fighter that they need to get rid of, find a new slot for somebody else. However, they go through that consideration, then they would be open to having him fight, a Sean Porter, probably not even a Sean Porter, but somebody in a stable in the PBC that they think the dude can have a chance to win against, but they're not 100% sure whether or not it's going to happen. But if it's convenient for them and the money makes sense for them, then they would do it. But they're not going to do it for Terence Crawford. They're not going to. They don't have very many fighters over there in Top Rank, period. By my count, Top Rank has 3 of them. Really, 2, and a third that is some that are coming up. Shakur Stevenson's coming up. Then you have Gilberto Ramirez. You have Terence Crawford. You have Vasyl Lomachenko. And other than that, I mean, who do they have? They've got a bunch of cats they got a bunch of people who are, borderline fighters. Nothing special about them. This is not the Top Rank that had Oscar De La Hoya, Floyd Mayweather Jr., and had, fighters up and down the weight classes like they had in the 90s. Up until like the heavyweight. I don't think they've ever really been big in heavyweights. But a lot of these guys who are at the PBC now, if there was no PBC, they might have been split between Don King or Top Rank. But when Golden Boy Promotions came along and PBC came along, now he doesn't just have like he back then when it was just him and Don King, right, and some other smaller promoters. He's got two promotional outfits. One promotional outfit that's much, if you managerial advisory, platform that promoters can work on in the PBC that's much bigger than Top Rank. Much deeper than Top Rank. And Golden Boy, which is, it's bigger at the top, doesn't have as many as many fighters across the board. But those fighters back in the day would have been with, many of those guys would have been with Top Rank, which would have allowed them to have those in-house fights that are competitive. But it's just not the case now. And there's no excuse for saying it. There's just no excuse for it. How can we know who the best welterweight champion, the best welterweight in the world is if they don't fight one another? And having Bob Arum just proclaim that Keith Thurman's not on his level, and Sean Porter's not on his level, and maybe Errol Spence is on his level. That's not going to cut it. These guys need to get in the fight and fight. They need to get in the ring and fight. But that became significantly more difficult to do when Terence Crawford re-signed with Top Rank. And that is my criticism of Top Rank. This is not a criticism. I can understand why Terence Crawford would take that money, but let's just not be fooled. When Errol Spence Jr. rolls his eyes at Top Rank, just like Floyd Mayweather Jr. rolled his eyes at Top Rank, just like Canelo ain't trying to go to Top Rank, just like, anybody with common sense knows they take in-house fights first. And it is what it is, man. It's a production over there. It's an organization designed, that's purpose is to build a champion, but by build a champion, it is build the perception of a champion. Make the boxing world believe that this is the best fighter, but not necessarily prove that he's the best fighter by putting him in the ring with the other champions and unifying getting an undisputed champion. And that's my beef with the issue. And and it is what it is. Hey, thank you for checking out the video. Hey, if you're not subscribed, please subscribe, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.